I wonder if everyone could take their seats, please. Thank you so much. We have a mayor in the audience. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council Committee to hold to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Bray,
Here.
Alderman Matthey,
Here.
Alderman Thies,
Here.
Alderman Malumway, Alderman Burgess,
Here.
Alderman Painter,
Here.
Alderman Schmidt,
Here.
Alderman Black, Alderman Hammond,
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. At this point, we're going to start with one of the fun parts of the job. And this is presentation of Bloomington 101 certificates to the following participants. And I just want to say she is not here, but Nora Dukowitz really took this idea and ran and made this happen. Is this, Steve, this is 3 years? So I think it's 2014, did it start? And I know you started in 14, so I realize I'm probably putting you on the spot. Someone wouldn't, if Nora were here, she would know. So let's just say, give or take, it was fall of 2014, and we've always had large numbers of citizens who want to come inside City Hall, and Gary Lambert's smiling because he was the first mayor. And it has really, really been a success of getting people inside to understand what their government's doing and give us some positive suggestions. So at this point, should I read them all first? What am I supposed to do, Madam Clerk? Tell me. Should I read them all first, or should I read them? Okay. How about if we do this? If you will come forward and receive your proclamation, the first certificate of attendance is proudly presented to Monica Adams for participation in the Bloomington 101 program. Monica, thank you. Thanks, Monica. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn to my alderwomen to each side so I do not butcher this name.
Oh, it's Holly Ambule.
Ambule?
Yeah.
Okay, Holly Ambule. No, Holly, and she's not here to hear me potentially mispronounce her name. Okay. Well, can we give a round of applause to Holly? Thank you. If you'll notice, these are in alphabetical order. So Chuck, you're coming soon. Tracy Anderson. Tracy Anderson. If we could give a round of applause to Tracy Anderson. Thank you. Sarah Bauer. Sarah. Okay, Sarah. Bonnie Brown. Thank you so much. I was about to give you two of them. Thank you. Julie Kozad Callahan. Julie? Thank you very much for participating. Thanks. Andrew Christ. Andrew? Well, thank you, Andrew, for participating. Tara Desmond. Tara? Well, thank you. Julie Drake. Well, Julie, thank you. An abstention? Here we go. Someone who's not a stranger. Although I swear when I got his certificate, I said, is this the Chuck Erickson? Chuck Erickson, please come forward. Thank you so much for participating.
That's Alderman Erickson to you.
Next is Steve Grady. Steve? No. Steve's not here? Thank you, Steve. Okay, I'm going to... Okay.
Terry Hellregel, and she's not here.
Terry Hellregel? Hellregel?
Hellregel.
Hellregel. Thank you. And Elizabeth Kuba. I saw her, I thought. Elizabeth? No, I guess not. But thank you, Liz. Mark Mulick. Thank you for participating. Appreciate it. Mark Murray. Thank you so much for participating. Thanks. Thank you. One way or another, our Mayor Pro Tem is going to keep me honest. Katie Reeder. Katie? Well, thank you, Katie, for participating. Wendy Secord. Wendy Secord. Well, thank you, Wendy. Julie Sibley. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it very much. And last, but certainly not least, Kelly Williams. Kelly. Well, Kelly. And we will make sure that the other participants get these. I will make sure that the clerk has these. This is something, if you have not participated, I would strongly urge you to do so. Those of you who have, we're always looking for people who are committed to our city, who'd like to give back and serve on our boards and commissions. So please keep that in mind. And I know we're all busy, but there are some times where, we do ask, well, we may not ask you, but it's important to step up to the plate. Next, we move to public comment, and people have up to 3 minutes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people for public comment, and I'll read these in groups of 2. We don't really have quite the time crunch if we had more than 10. We have Bruce Meeks and then Donna Bolin.
Good evening, Council. I would like to talk about item 8 on the agenda this evening. Unfortunately, I don't have handouts for the other citizens, but you have received a couple emails from me about this item. I would like to see you go a little bit further. I agree with the approach of clarifying, putting items on the agenda via the written format that you've been using since I do believe it was the Metro Zone was the first topic. I think it's important, though, that you look at Robert's Rules of Order and that you consider using an additional item on your agenda and all agendas, called other business. You can call it setting items on the agenda if you want. And at that time, any council person, any other elected official can say, hey, I'd like to put Oreo as the official cookie of the City of Bloomington. I'd like to have that discussion. I think that would be very helpful in tracking for the city manager. I think it'd be helpful for tracking for you as the council, and it would move us closer to more open and transparency about the agenda items. I sent to you a sample of the Mountain View, California, where they actually put out there a full year ahead of some of the items that they're going to be considering on their agenda. I know some of you have talked about that in the past. I think this is an opportunity to change the legal framework, bring in Robert's Rules of Order that we're used to using, hopefully we're used to using, and we allow the motion a second for items during the council, work sessions, any public hearing, public meeting, for you to add those items. I do believe Sherry is working on something with the staff. I don't know what they're doing about maybe a tracking system for items. I don't know how far that is. I haven't talked to anybody in the council about this other than email. But I really think we should consider going a little bit farther with this for your web and flow, and this would improve our communication model immensely, in my opinion. You all would be on the same page at the same time at the same location, and so would the citizens. As for the funding of Bloomington Advantage, I don't see any metrics to support the continue the funding. I don't see their need to do that. We have a lot of changes going on in Bloomington. I think we need to start asking ourselves, what is next for Bloomington? And what we've done in the past has not really worked, and we need to be a little bit more innovative and not stay with the same old approach. And same thing for the small business of Illinois Wesleyan. I do not believe we should further fund that. I think we need to have a group discussion with everybody and see if we can make some ambassadors out there that are entrepreneurs to bring in other entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Next, Donna Bolin, and then Jeremiah Houston.
I'm Donna Bolin. I live in Ward 2. I'm here to talk about the BN Advantage also. I understand the concept and I'm in support of it, but I would like to remind you what was said at the budget retreat. You need to learn to say no. You need to stop doing what you've been doing because it's not working. And you need to watch after your own finances. All of those entities in Bloomington Normal Advantage are subsidized by tax dollars. Bloomington City itself needs to watch after its own tax dollars. $3 million deficit coming up for next year. When this money was budgeted originally 2 years ago, our financial situation looked a lot better. The forecast was better. It was shortly after the last tax increase. That has not proven to come out. Our revenue is flat and possibly decreasing. I just would like you to say no. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. And someone who's no stranger to intergovernmental workings of McLean County, the mayor of Carlock, Jeremiah Houston, followed by William Gustafson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and esteemed aldermans. Thank you for your opportunity to be here tonight. I have some concerns. One, it is concerning removing the agenda of the mayor to place an item on the agenda. The mayors of Carlock, the mayors of Danvers, and the mayors of Normal, including the chairman of the McLean County Board, have always placed an agenda item for placement of a meeting, including my board of trustees, including the trustees of Danvers, including other communities. I would seriously consider you to relook at this resolution. You guys also have the opportunity to vote no on any resolution the mayor brings up as a proposal. So I don't understand why you would want to remove the executive powers that he uses. There's a separation of powers for a reason. There's a separation of branches of the government for that particular reason. I feel if you remove this, this is going to put more powers into the aldermans and their wards. You must speak loudly that to change our government in this manner, it is not the best interest of the staff, it is not the best interest of the people, and it should not be disguised as such. This proposal is an attack on everyone who believed the vision that was set forth on April 4th of this year in Bloomington's election. The city does not have the time to continue and be halted by obstructionists on the council. We have the force on the council to work with the mayor and move forward in progress. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and you guys have a good night.
Thank you. William Gustafson and Angela Scott.
Good evening, people, mayor, etc. This is kind of spontaneous. I want to bring up the matter of the leaf collection process again. I guess the city spends upwards to $500,000 for machinery, vacuum, employees, whatever. But some of you may know this guy, might have seen this guy. He talked at Illinois Wesleyan. He's a soil scientist, a tree guy, down looking at the micro, whatever's falling from the ground to benefit the trees. So he's got his PhD, he's got a book.
He looked like he was eating dirt when I first saw it.
Yeah, the Song of Trees. Anyway, we really don't know the long-term ramifications of removing the leaves, 10, 20 years. Who knows? Did the trees lose their immunity? The emerald ash borer, were the trees weakened? So what I was proposing that the city do, I know we banned burning them and we banned taking landscape waste out to landfills, so can we more or less ban picking leaf matter up in the fall and encourage people to rake them out of the street? And there's different mulching techniques. There's a Popular Science magazine, How to Mulch a Leaf with Lawnmower. Everybody's got the lawnmower. You can different blades, etc. Put a thing on them, mulch them up different ways. But they found out that the nitrogen-rich grass benefits the carbon in the leaves. So there's kind of a chemical interaction that's going to be beneficial in the long run. Everybody said, well, it's going to kill my grass. You know, it's kind of, well, would you rather lay under the shade of a leaf tree in the summertime or a blade of grass, you know? So the grass shouldn't be under the trees anyway, at least right up to the trunk. So ideally, Illinois Wesleyan had a beautiful example of mulching on a lot of their trees. They're out to the drip line, which is the outer edge of the trees, and they put mulch there. It's kind of, well, that's where the leaves go. but the kids learn about the carbon nitrogen cycle in third and fourth grade, and then they come home, rake the leaves out to the curb. It's, wait, something's not right here. Anyway, we're to be stewards of the land, and the city could save money. And I'd like for the city to explore incentives, like we got different neighborhoods. So can this neighborhood save the city this much money? Can we kind of compete or throw some incentives out there? If you all take care of your lawn or rake these leaves out of the street, you know, we're going to take, 1 month off the refuse fee, or, take $25 off your water bill or something. So anyway, some ideas that could be explored to save the city some money like that. So let's see, last thing. I was raised by this guy and his teachings, the Pope. We're to be stewards of the land. This is Pope Francis. He has an encyclical about the earth, again, being stewards of the land. And it's kind of like from the first day of creation, everything was good and very good. And like I said, I'm probably the only one that drives down the street. I was employee at Custer Brothers Nursery 25 years. So to see these mounds out on the curb, it's like, oh boy. Some of them are like a wheelbarrow size. Can't you find a place to put this on your lawn? Anyway, if we knew the true cost of it, I think some people would probably say, yeah, well, I'll put these back in the yard. We don't charge by the bucket, when we're picking up the leaves. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Angela Scott, last but not least. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I want to talk about Be an Advantage and the Small Business Development Center at Illinois Wesleyan University that Council will be discussing this evening. Both of these ventures, according to your packet, link to Strategic Plan Item 1, Financially Sound City Providing Quality Basic Services. We are not financially sound. For those of you who don't get that, please look at the underfunded pensions. Basic services would be streets that don't destroy your vehicle, something we don't have. I don't know everything about Be an Advantage, but I know this. They spent taxpayer money to travel to Arkansas to see what a sports complex might do for our community. They traveled to another state with a different economic situation. They could have gone to Peoria or Pekin to see how that is working out. Instead, they wasted money to travel to Arkansas. I don't know if council is aware of the waste that's been going on in the city, but any funds that go to this organization are going to end up being a waste. We are not the state of Arkansas. We are the state of Illinois. We are not Conway. We are Bloomington. Conway does not have a twin city with a university that has the ability to rent out facilities for sporting events. In fact, by building a sports complex, are we potentially taking away money from Illinois State University, another tax-funded venture? Did anyone in Be an Advantage bother to check that out? We do not need, nor do the majority of Bloomington citizens want a sports complex. Not only that, we don't want another organization for economic development. They're costing us too much money. My expectation is that the council and the staff of the city of Bloomington would be doing the economic development for the community. And just so you all understand, regardless of whether we receive federal, state, or local funds to build these empty fields up, it is all paid by taxes. And in case you weren't paying attention, everybody is taxed out. We don't have money to be taxed anymore. The Small Business Development Center at Illinois Wesleyan University sounds like another effort to push the downtown agenda, which for the record I believe is the most corrupt move in the history of any Bloomington City Council, right above the Coliseum. The packet notes that the strategic plan significance all items, it lists all these items which should already be covered by the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Council, since we are already paying them and taking them to lunch on a pretty regular basis. So if the council decides to throw the mayor and one council member's employer into the mix, it might be an opportunity to see how much more corruption we can make happen here in Bloomington. If I were Illinois Wesleyan, I would run from this unethical and potentially illegal situation.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move on to the consideration of approving the committee of the whole meeting minutes of October 16th, 2017. Are there any corrections, clarifications to these minutes, or a motion to approve as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve them as presented.
Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt to approve as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
By Alderwoman Bray. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? Oh, you want to do it? I can't. Okay. I thought in the past when you gave me the evil eye, it was I had to do this. Okay. We can do it by this way. Make it quickly. Make it very quick. Okay. The motion carries unanimously, 8-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Okay. Again, my mistake. I thought for some reason we need to do that early. All right, we move right along to item 6 on our agenda, and that's presentation and discussion regarding the funding request from Being Advantage for Bloomington. And just so we know, we start out with a presentation from Austin Grammer, our Economic Development Coordinator, and then Charlie Moore, President and CEO of the McLean County Chamber of Commerce, and Kyle Ham, CEO of our very own Economic Development Council. And then we have budgeted approximately 15 minutes for council discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Austin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. If it's all right, I've learned that Kyle Ham has a place to be in a few minutes, and so since both of these items are pretty much interrelated, if it would be okay to combine the two presentations and then combine the discussion together, would that be okay?
I will want to recuse myself for the Wesleyan conversation, so maybe I should recuse myself now.
Or for the
Okay,
discussion?
are you going to be talking about Wesleyan?
Yeah, he just said he wanted to.
Yeah, if we could-
But I mean, Kyle will, but will you be? Okay. So, yeah. if you
Okay.
feel-
I'm uncomfortable having Karen leave for half of the presentation. I'm
Well, that's
sorry
what I
that-
was asking.
I'm sorry
but
that Kyle
is
has
gonna be-
something, well, I'm looking at Kyle and he's shaking his head. I'm sorry that Kyle has somewhere else to go, but I think Karen's an important part of the one discussion.
Or we can keep it separated, it's fine.
If you're not going to talk about Illinois Wesleyan?
I'm available to speak on either. I was just going to kind of introduce
Okay,
them.
okay. How about if we have you, and I do agree with Alderwoman Howman.
Okay.
And so, why don't you speak,
Sure. Okay, sorry.
but not about Illinois Wesleyan, and then,
Right.
Thank you, Mayor.
sure.
Well, the first item, item number 6 that we're discussing now is the Being Advantage. This is a regional collaborative effort that really works to extend the capacity of city staff to promote economic development on a county-wide regional basis. You can see from the council memo that a number of the city's comprehensive plan goals related to economic development overlap very nicely with the Being Advantage strategic plan. There's a significant benefit to the city by having and actively participating in such a regional effort. Tonight we have with us Charlie Moore, the CEO of the Bloomington Normal McLean County Chamber of Commerce, and so he will speak on the Being Advantage item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Kyle's going to start. Charlie's going to bat second here. So
Charlie's going to bet second? Okay.
let me just make that clear. This is my priority to be here tonight. We are doing a property tax abatement in Hudson tonight for a special meeting for a new employer you may have heard about, but we'll make it work. So thank you to Austin, Mayor, council members, and Manager Rasmussen for the time to be here. Bloomington and McLean County as a whole have been blessed for a very long time and have a strong and diverse economy. The four main pillars of that economy include financial and insurance sector with State Farm and Country. Our agricultural sector is our strongest sector of the economy. We're the largest single producer of corn and soybeans in the nation. Of course, healthcare with Advocate and Broman, both expanding. And of course, education with ISU Wesleyan and Heartland. But despite this long-running strong economy, many of the warning signs are starting to show themselves. The state of Illinois' financial woes place an increased burden on you, municipalities, our schools, and our businesses, and it's not getting better. As a community, we lost nearly 2,000 jobs between 2015 and 2016, less people in the economy contributing to our growth. Over the last 5 years, we are down 1,100 students in our K-12 school systems throughout McLean County. The state's funding formula is built on kids in seats. 56% decline in new housing permits from 2000 to today, and 8 of our top 20 employers are taxpayer-based. So the city, the town, the county, Heartland, ISU, Unit 5, and 87. Again, the state of Illinois is putting a burden on many of our top employers. Retail, as you all know, is down across the state of Illinois, but particularly here in McLean County. And lastly, nearly 50% of our private sector payroll comes from one industry, which is the financial and insurance. It's a lot of eggs in one basket. So this is by no means to say that the sky is falling, but we believe the solution to those challenges is growth. And with that, I'd like to introduce Charlie from the Chamber of Commerce to discuss the document before you and discuss the BN Advantage. Thank you.
Charlie? Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to be here and present an update on the work that we're doing in the name of the BN Advantage. In order to skip right to the dialogue and answer questions you have regarding our work in the BN Advantage strategy, we prepared a packet for you to review at your leisure. I'd like to walk you through this booklet, though, right now, just to take a moment to share what we've included. So you all have a copy that I left at your places before the meeting. The first is just 2 pages that simply are a follow-up letter to our initial ask with some updated information. The most important takeaway from that letter is the fact that from the beginning of this initiative, there is a combined total investment commitment and in-kind services that add up to nearly $600,000 in private sector commitment to the implementation of this strategy. The next 9 pages include an update to the work and the future work of each of our identified task forces, including workforce development, quality of life and place, entrepreneurship, marketing communications, and lastly, metrics on how we will measure the work that we'll be reporting on. The following page is the overall financial ask from the City of Bloomington as it relates to economic development budget, noted in the staff-prepared document under Agenda Item 6 for tonight's meeting. You'll see that there's an overall request for $97,000 in new investment to each of the areas I previously identified, along with an additional $50,000 ask from the EDC on top of the city's previous commitment level. The next page is a brief budget breakdown for the realized annual expenses that we see correlating with the strategy, so that way we're very transparent on where those dollars will be spent. The subsequent pages are operations material, including a list of those that serve on the BN Advantage Leadership Council, the operational structure, a copy of the EDC and Chamber strategic plans, and lastly, our top 10 advantages and ways to get involved we first published for the BN Beyond event last June with over 600 community leaders and business owners in attendance. So that takes you through the booklet, but now I think it's, Kyle and I, we believe that we're making excellent strides implementing action items that will pave our way towards the end goal of the BN Advantage strategy. The ultimate goal through these efforts is specifically to diversify our local economy. Kyle and I are here tonight as 2 different organizations collaborating in our work to ensure that we have a talent pipeline in place for our employers, a community with a focus on placemaking, and to ensure there's help and resources available to those who desire to engage in entrepreneurship activity, as small business truly is the heartbeat and the pulse of our local economy. For all of those things, there is a pathway. There is a plan of action of which we can measure those results, and we know it as the BN Advantage Economic Development and Marketing Strategy. While many have joined us to aid in these efforts, we're here tonight to ask for your help. Not only a financial contribution to allow us to further these efforts benefiting our community, but to share in the collaborative efforts it will take to make these efforts pay off. On Thanksgiving week at all times, we have an opportunity to pause because we have so much to be thankful for. I might suggest to be an advantage, while tactical in nature, is also a philosophy. It's the way you feel about Bloomington and about Normal. We sometimes get lost and we fail to see where we've succeeded. There's a message there, and we need your help to convey it, starting with those who already believe in and invest in Bloomington and are thankful for where our community has come from and where it is on track to go. Our ask is for the City of Bloomington to invest in these efforts, of which so many private sector businesses already have, and be inclusive of the BN messaging and of the BN brand. With your commitment, let us help you be successful on the intentional growth, development, and future economic diversification and prosperity for the City of Bloomington.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay. At this point, we can move right along to our a budgeted discussion on this matter, up to 15 minutes. Comments or questions about being advantage?
And Mr. Mayor, I would add that I believe I just saw it today, but we've been working with your office to schedule some 3-on-1s or 2-on-1s with individual council members, so that if they're, I think over the next 2 weeks, that would be a chance to maybe do a deeper dive. If there's specific questions about the investment, the numbers, the work that's being done, we certainly have that time available tonight for 15 minutes, but those meetings, I believe, have been set or are in the process of being
Correct.
set.
Correct. And then that's the way we operate and communities do if they don't have committees.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Alderwoman Howman.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm, for myself and perhaps for people in the audience, could you or Charlie or someone help us understand Being Advantage, EDC, and McLean County Chamber and how they all fit together and why we have three
Sure.
organizations?
Sure. So look at it this way. Charlie is a longstanding chamber. The EDC has been around about 20 years, and we have very different missions. One is Charlie's to support the business community, and ours is two parts. One is to help retain existing business through expansion, but also to recruit new business. Those are the two core functions. When this group came together, the Charlie, myself, Vasu from Regional Planning, Crystal Howard from the CVB, the airport, and Connect Transit, the initial thought was, how are we marketing this community? How are we telling our story? What is our brand? And those discussions amongst those 6 groups grew into, well, what are we being deliberate about from our economic development strategy, and how are we going to be deliberate to grow this community? And so the Being Advantage is actually, it's a physical plan. This is a playbook that has actionable outcomes, but it also has measurable outcomes of metrics that we say, okay, here's the things we're going to measure so that we can see where we've grown and where we've had success. So when you say Being Advantage, it is a strategy, but it also is a brand. It's a brand to talk about the region as a whole and collectively market ourselves. What we've done here with the Being Advantage is said, okay, there are parts in this plan that are core to what Kyle does at the EDC and parts that are core to what the chamber does, and we've separated that so there's not duplication. So for example, Charlie and the chamber are responsible for the workforce initiative. They're also spearheading the quality of life initiative, whereas Kyle at the EDC and our team is responsible for the marketing communication, which directly plays into attraction, and secondly, the entrepreneurship piece. Vasu at Regional Planning has taken on the metrics component because we all know Vasu, she's really good at that type of stuff. And so we've asked her and her organizations have dove head in on owning the metrics piece of that. So there are groups involved, but Being Advantage is a strategy. It's a name and it's a brand that we're trying to build. If you were at our event last week, you heard our keynote speaker say, look, Bloomington needs to have their own identity, Normal needs to have their own identity. But as a region, with the outside looking in, what is our story as a whole? And that's really what Being Advantage is.
Okay. Alderman Burgess.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first of which is, it looks like in the packet you've had private commitments this year and next year for around $215,000 in investment in Being Advantage, and you're asking the city to invest $247,000. Do you have any commitments from any of our other regional partners, or what kind of ask will you be making of them, for example, the town of Normal or McLean County?
We are also asking the town of Normal for a similar request. We're in the process of working with the county. We think that's going to be a little bit longer conversation. We had to start somewhere with both the communities. But getting into this, we have, I would say, the tip of the iceberg from the private sector. We've been asking everyone to contribute more, and that has begun. But that doesn't end today, and it doesn't end if you are committed to this as well. There are lots of other businesses that need to have a stake in this because we believe everyone benefits from the success we will have, the growth we have, the more jobs we can bring. And so this is an ongoing process. So the more partners, the more private-public split. I mean, our goal, and I've said this many times publicly, at the end of the day, we'd love to have the private sector be the heavier load, but that's going to take time as we ramp up. But we've begun that process, and Charlie and I have met with probably 20 to 25 private sector businesses. and they have increased some of those fundings as you see here.
Great, thank you. And my second question, and I will say in general, I find this program very exciting because if we're not out there marketing ourselves and we're not out there sharing our success and our desirability, no one else is going to do that for us, right? So this is a very important thing for our community to be discussing. So you talked about an action plan and how this is, you know, a marketing strategy, and there's a document that goes along with it. Can you share with us, since Be an Advantage has been in existence for a little while now, what has been accomplished and what are some of the things that this program is already working on?
Sure. So I'll give you the breakdown of what we've worked on, and then Charlie, I'll pass to him. So from a marketing communication standpoint, EDC did not have a marketing communication person, and we saw the need not only for the EDC, but for Be an Advantage. And so we went ahead and hired somebody, and we've taken on that responsibility of having that full-time person. So if you've seen an uptick in social media, we have a Be an Advantage website now that's being maintained. We are actually, Marianne Ford and Zach Dietmeyer, our marketing person, we've done nearly 30 community stories. So part of that is telling our story about the community. We've got about 30 companies that are currently using the brand. And I will show you this, and if you haven't seen this, but this is the brand book that was developed and the style guide that allows businesses to understand how to use the brand and incorporate it into their own. Some examples we've used is, Heartland Community College has used the brand in their fall catalog. We've got businesses like State Farm that are using it on their recruitment page. The Association of Realtors are using the website and some of the supporting materials for when people are moving to the community. We have a marketing strategy for attractionists. It's called our readiness plan. You're on our board of directors. You've seen that plan, but it really breaks down the segments of who are we talking to and why are we promoting our community, and then developing print materials around that readiness plan. So everything we do at the EDC is driven around attraction, and so that has also been done. We're also in the process of launching 3 community workshops. Those workshops will allow businesses to come in and look about how they can use the brand, how they can incorporate it. We've seen businesses use it in radio spots and radio ads. From the entrepreneurship, you'll hear about the Small Business Development Center. That was a partnership between the EDC and Wesleyan to bring back a Small Business Development Center. I think the numbers are pretty staggering, and I'll let Karen do that because that's her work. But we've been able to bring that back. That is core to entrepreneurship, is to helping provide resources to small businesses grow. We have a chair now, Mike Straza, and we're building a business plan around the ecosystem. If you'll see in your packet, there is a sort of I'll rip it out here, a map. This is a mapping that we're doing as a community from an entrepreneurship standpoint. It's how do we look at money, angel investing to attract and help businesses grow. What are the success stories? What are the infrastructure? What are the resources we possess in this community for entrepreneurs? And what are the things we don't have that we need to go out and get to help build this ecosystem that anybody can grow a business here in this community? So that's just a quick snapshot of our 2 activities. You want to touch on workforce?
Sure, I can. Those of you, and you all know me, that if you ask me the time, I tell you how to build a watch. And so I could spend the whole night telling you about the work that we've engaged in workforce, and it's really exciting. And so I'll make it brief because I see there are other questions to get to. But quite frankly, to the comment and question that Diana asked, and then Amelia, what you asked as well, just as far as Chamber EDC and then the work that we're doing, one of the things that we're looking to is how do we leverage our resources and make sure that we're not being duplicative of the work that's being done or taking place throughout the community. One of the things that we're looking to do over the next 3 months is to acquire Compact, Community Compact, that's been in existence for a very long while, that will merge with our work in the workforce development, so there'll be less cost, there won't be investment there. It'll merge into the work that we're doing, and so we're trying to leverage the scale of economies, if you will, and make sure that we're not being duplicative, but that we're also being more productive. And so with workforce development, to what Kyle said, there's a number of things. We've been so focused on workforce with our committee for the last 18 months. It probably has about 100 different volunteers on a different variety of assets, and so we have some primary committee functions with business engagement and curriculum, and there's a lot of details that I could go into that you probably don't want to hear right now. But what I will tell you is that we are on the verge of hiring our first full-time workforce development person. We have someone identified that will be coming to us from likely Des Moines, Iowa, which brings a lot of interesting information from what they've done over the last 10 years to what we're doing here in Bloomington Normal. But also looking to move into purchasing some software that will allow some local mentorship from our professionals. We have, and I won't won't say, but in the schools there are, one district in particular, there are 500 students per every guidance counselor. Well, they don't have the opportunity to really provide career counseling. So starting with the 8th grade career fair and going all the way through college, how do we provide online mentorships which turn into internships and experiential relationships that introduce the students to our local talent, to our local professionals that can give guidance and career counseling, if you will, through online mentorship. So there's just a lot of different things. Those are two of the top things I think are important to relate tonight. Quality of life in place, we're just beginning that plan of work. We've heard a little bit about the trip to Arkansas just a little bit ago, and so I think there's a lot of updates that can be given from the results from that trip, and we'll talk more about that at a later time as well. But as we put together a community and we talk about placemaking and we look at quality of place and aesthetic value, what does that translate into the retention of workforce, into the retention of the talent, that the companies that are here, the families that are here, but the ones that we want to relocate and continue to grow our Bloomington base. So that's a very quick overview of what's happening in both of those categories.
Thank you, Charlie. Alderman Black.
Scott was first.
Thank you. I always appreciate when Charlie comes because it's very rare that someone talks faster than me with the microphone.
Me too.
Yeah, that's nice. Thank you both for coming. I appreciate it. I'm looking here at the committee of the whole discussion. Staff is seeking some clarification from council, so most of my remarks will be directed towards staff, maybe with a few questions here or there. Just kicking it off, I would say that I did see the updated website. I think it looks fantastic. It's very professionally done, puts a good face forward, and I think that is a step in the right direction. The sense that I'm getting from the residents in Ward 7 has been that they would like to see more economic development targeted to our historic neighborhoods. We have infrastructure challenges. We heard that conversation. We're talking about MetroNet when they came to the community. That definitely impacts business and business development in those locations. I've heard a lot of concerns about the airport specifically. I'm reminded of when I was on the county board and we talked about bringing Frontier Airlines in, and that was a controversial conversation. But currently we really don't have any west access from Zero, which is a grave concern, and that ultimately hinders it. But I guess my point would be, with that feedback, kind of speaking to it in whenever this comes to pass at some point in the future. The other piece is, when I think about our own economic development policy, we kind of have a but-for philosophy. So this project wouldn't happen but for the incentives that we're doing. And I guess what I'm looking for, there's a lot of information here, a lot of packets, a lot of strategy. That's all great. But I think a lot of folks want to hear the nuts and bolts. I mean, leveraging the region's digital infrastructure and other assets, that's great. I support that 100%. But what does that mean in dollars and cents for a resident of Bloomington? If we don't increase the funding, what does that look like for programs that we can't do? How will that hinder us? And those sorts of things. 'Cause that's the frustration that I'm hearing, is that there may be many successes, and a lot of what you guys do is involved with sales and bringing businesses in, and we have a lot of challenges and so many things that we have to fight against, namely the state of Illinois. But ultimately, we have to show some results at the end of the day, and I'm excited to see those. And I just, if that piece is really clarified in the final packet, whenever this comes to pass, I think that'd be very helpful for me to understand that. I'm looking forward to the 3-on-1 meeting to have more of these conversations, because this is really important. I think it's critical that we have to take a leadership role. Things don't just happen anymore. But I also want to be very careful. Kind of incidentally, John Oliver just did a piece about economic development packages and the harm it does to some communities because of just kind of the back and forth, which I encourage folks to check that out, because he really highlights the concerns that come when we try to poach from other communities, or we're trying to do, and I'm referring to other regions, those sorts of things that we got to be very mindful of. And so there's a greater interest that I've seen in economic development lately, especially amongst some of the folks that I interact with. So I appreciate you guys coming tonight. Thank you for all this information. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I look forward to learning more.
Okay. Alderwoman Schmidt.
Thank you. I think that this is a great segue to what Alderman Black just said. I have a lot of questions about sort of the quantifiable results of this return on investment from the last, what has it been, a couple of years that we've invested now. And I realize you have to put some gas in the tank before you get going, but I'd really like to see some very specific benchmarks. Scott mentioned MetroNet, so a typical question I might get is, why would we give money to be an advantage when MetroNet is ready to install if only but for the fact that our infrastructure is not in good shape, right? So it's a tug of war for funds, and where's the most strategic place for us to put them, and understanding what those benchmarks are in pretty discrete ways, and knowing that we have a clarity about what that deliverable is going to be and why it would matter to somebody in Bloomington or Normal or the surrounding communities is important. I'm also interested in knowing, and again, it may come in our 3-in-1 conversation or some additional city council conversation, about how the work that Austin Grammer and Sally Heffernan do together in terms of attracting and cheering. I mean, I think the two of you have a good working relationship, and so how does your work get folded into all of this, and what's that added value? So those are some of the questions that I have.
I think it's really the marketing materials that the EDC and through the Be an Advantage effort put together really expand the capacity of my work here at the city. And if I'm not having to spend time creating marketing materials that market our community, I can be spending time doing other things specific to the city, West Side development, things like that. So I'm very supportive of the marketing side of what the Be an Advantage is bringing to the picture, and the marketing staff at the EDC. I mean, it's just fantastic work and publications and data that they put out that really extend my ability to do my job. And of course, that's always been a concern at the city, is additional staff versus additional demands or additional need to do more projects, but without hiring additional city staff. Here with the Be an Advantage effort, we're able to leverage the staff of the EDC and the chamber, and then of course all the number of private sector volunteers, which, I mean, it's quite an impressive list at the very end on the last page of the packet. And I think that's really great in that the level of engagement that we're seeing from the private sector and their donation of staff time and the facilities to hold these meetings and provide feedback and input. So it really just expands our capacity here at the city to promote the economic development efforts of the city, I would say.
Alderman Matthey, and then Millawamboy.
I felt like Scott there for a second. Guys, thanks for putting all the information together. I know you've spent many, many hours and had a lot of conversations. Just to piggyback off of what Karen was saying, we definitely need numbers and metrics to make sure we know what we're buying here, right? The most frequent comment that I hear is that there's a level of frustration with it's perceived that the only people who get any sort of economic help are outside developers, out of town. So I love the fact that, Kyle, you said that you started talking about we want to retain and grow our existing businesses, right? How do we take those businesses and help them get to the next level? I think that's a hugely important component of this entire project, because it's not only marketing Bloomington as a place that you could come to Bloomington and open a business, but it's also marketing Bloomington as a place where good quality products can come from at the same time. I go to a lot of trade shows and conferences for my work, and I said, I'm from Bloomington. And they're like, I love Indiana. I said, no, I'm not from Indiana. I was like, Minnesota, it's really cold. No, I'm not from Minnesota either. I'm in Bloomington, Illinois. Like, there's a Bloomington in Illinois? What? So I think that we have a lot of work to do to build that brand about what Bloomington is, what Normal is, what this region looks like. And, there's so many things we can do there, especially around the area of entrepreneurship. We have 2 colleges with some incredible brains being developed in those locations that we can build from. We've gotten some great businesses that have started up in Bloomington. I'm thinking recently I talked to the guys over at Quick Picks and what they're doing with 3 guys and a couple of laptops on a shoestring budget, and how much they're doing, how fast it is. What does it look like if we give them a little boost we've got some people leading the way with Bitcoin security technologies and stuff, and how do we boost them, and what kinds of, with ISU's new security programs, cybersecurity programs, how can we work cybersecurity with the emergence of Bitcoins? And, there's so many great things that we can do in partnership if we can all just, get along and move together in the same direction. So, I just want to say thank you guys for putting this program together, and I look forward to getting more information from it.
Alderman Muwambwe.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Kyle. I know this has been a long time coming, and you guys put in a lot of effort into this, and I think it's pretty difficult, so I'd like to commend you, bringing together so many people and different groups to try to come to a common understanding as a community. So, job well done. And I'm sorry, hopefully I didn't miss anything because I got here late. But the one aspect of this that I'm particularly interested in is new business attraction. As you know, the local landscape is shifting a little bit, and I'm hoping that we would be a little bit more aggressive, in terms of trying to recruit new businesses to Bloomington Normal. I remember when I first got on the council, I was interviewed by WJBC, and I said, that was one of the things that we had to focus on, that we could no longer rely on the various entities that supported the community, and we had to go out and look for others. So hopefully we'll see, a much more aggressive effort in that area. And along with that, this might put a little bit of pressure on yourself, but I would like to see, as others have said, benchmarks or something, some goal to go after. Because when I read new business attraction development at this stage, it sounds nebulous, but I'd like to see, some sort of a number or something. To really, because I think we just need to put pressure on ourselves to be able to do that. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Okay. Thank you very much. And then at this point, Alderwoman Schmidt, you wanted to be excused from the next discussion, is that correct?
Right. Do we need to summarize anything here for staff? Or I got the impression that maybe we're all just looking for more specifics before we give staff
Yes,
direction?
I believe, again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was thinking, especially if we're splitting this. Yes.
Right, yeah. So again, with the being advantages as outlined in the council memo, we have $390,000 set aside for this fiscal year. And then as we're working on budgeting for next fiscal year and then the out years, again, Steve's coming around every day with his budget acts. Is this a program, is this funding that you would want to, at least at this time, even without a specific agreement in place, but it sounds like there's a lot of motivation from the council to have some more deliberation and move towards an agreement with some defined deliverables and metrics. Is the general consensus from the council to retain this funding into the future?
And I think we also have to understand that that doesn't necessarily mean that we're agreeing to your ask. Just a general, commitment, because I believe, I don't know actually, I'm not sure that what I know is public, so I won't say anything.
Are we looking to do that, to come to a consensus about that this evening? I'm personally not there yet.
Yeah, well,
right.
What are you asking for then?
Well, right now, for our current fiscal year, we have $390,000 budgeted for Being Advantage. That has not actually been committed, so it's still in the bank account of the city. Last fiscal year, we did the same. It wasn't committed. It rolled into the general fund. Again, we're working on the budget for next fiscal year and then the out years. So direction for staff is looking, do we continue to budget this money, knowing that no funds from the city have yet been committed to date, but looks, again, there seems to be some desire to move forward with making some form of commitment financially. Again, it's staff's looking for that direction. Do we continue to budget that?
So essentially you're looking at direction for, at 500 feet, is the council still committed to something? We're not committing to a particular dollar amount. We're not committing to even what's in the budget necessarily, and certainly not necessarily to what you have, or what, not you, but what has been asked. But do we move to the next step?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
Mayor, the way I would see this is today, what we did was we had the update on being advantage, and we would be prepared to put it on the council agenda to vote for some amount of money at some time in the future after you've had a chance to discuss it, and would like us to put that on the agenda then for a vote later.
And so that's what we're asking for now is do we continue? Is that fair to summarize what you're suggesting?
Yes,
What
we'll
you
bring
just
it back on another council memo for you to vote an amount, and we'll put an amount in here, but you will have an opportunity to discuss that and maybe adjust that amount or put in what you think is right. But we'll bring it back to another council meeting for a vote if you so desire.
Okay. And so, yes,
No,
Alderman
I was
Long.
just going to say, I mean, I think earlier Kyle mentioned the meetings that we're having with them. Isn't that a chance for us to better understand and at least...
So many of those specific micro questions can be answered in the smaller group meetings before we would bring this back to the council. Is that safe to say, Mr. Rasmussen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. So at this point, if I could just go around, again, we're not voting. This is just an informal, pardon me?
I don't even know if we need...
Is there a dissensus? Okay. Okay. All right.
I believe we just decided that we're going to gather more information in our small group meetings, and we may have
And
another
we're all okay with
conversation
that.
that gives Steve
Okay.
direction.
Okay. Well, then, thank you, gentlemen. Okay. But don't go far.
I am recusing myself.
Okay. Okay, next we have presentation and discussion regarding the funding request for the 2017-2018 Small Business Development Center located at Illinois Wesleyan University campus. We have a brief presentation by Austin Grammer, Charlie Moore, and Kyle Ham. Again, and that's about 10 minutes and about a 10-minute council discussion. So we'll start with you, Mr.
Well,
Grammer.
included in your packet is a lengthy history of the activities of the Small Business Development Center that was in operation at the Illinois State University campus for a number of years and had a major impact on our local economy and assisted quite a number of local businesses. By great fortune, the Illinois Wesleyan University has stepped up and, along with the partnership from the Bloomington Normal Economic Development Council, has reopened a Small Business Development Center on the IWU campus earlier this year. But in order for that economic development center to continue, additional funds are needed and a funding commitment. Only so long can IWU shoulder the costs to support that center on its own. The city's economic development strategic plan definitely calls out the importance of supporting entrepreneurialism and fostering it, and in fact names a Small Business Development Center as being one of the components of the city's support of encouraging and fostering entrepreneurial businesses. And again, as discussed earlier, supporting an SBDC here in the community helps extend the capabilities of the city's Office of Economic Development. Often the time that is needed to work with a new small business person is unfortunately time that I myself do not have given the other council-directed priorities for my time. So I myself fully support the funding for the SBDC as outlined as a way to assist small businesses, and often it's when the small businesses and entrepreneurs meet with the staff at the SBDC and are helped over many, many months, they can then get ready to then come and meet with me or other city staff and the city's planning or engineering departments as they look to construct a new business, a new facility, renovate a vacant building, things like that to start a new business. And so it's that assistance they've gotten before they even reach the city makes them more ready to go and allows the city staff to better make use of their time in assisting an entrepreneur that has all their ducks in a row through the help of the SBDC. Outlined in that council memo is a request for funding for the current 2017 and also for 2018 and 2019 as proposed to give some financial security and continued funding commitment into the next couple of years, so that way the SBDC staff know that the city is going to be there to partner with them. I believe that that is recommended by staff, and also we look to get I myself as staff direction from the City Council as to what percentage of financial split the City Council would be willing to support as we look to partner with the Town of Normal, IWU, and the BN EDC on this joint funding for the SBDC. We have Karen Bouchou, the director of the SBDC. She is here and can answer any questions that you might have about the SBDC's operations, and of course Charlie and Kyle as well. So,
Now, is this something that could conceivably also be discussed in any kind of 3-on-1 meetings?
The direction that we've and the request that we've received from Illinois Wesleyan is that based upon their support of the center thus far through this year, and then they're looking to reapply to the state of Illinois DCEO for the federal SBA funding, is that they would prefer the Town of Normal, the City of Bloomington, and the EDC to all partner together through the proposed joint funding agreement that's included in the packet, and sooner rather than later, unfortunately, would be what they are looking for in the form of a commitment. Staff from the city and the town and Wesleyan and the EDC have worked together over the last few weeks to put together this agreement, basically based on a previously council-adopted template of intergovernmental agreements. A few tweaks here or there, change the wording from one government type of unit to SBDC. So this agreement we find contains all the different types of provisions that the council would typically be looking for in something like this. Reporting and oversight, specific requirements as to what the center would be doing, and then timelines and outlining the specific funding. So staff would look for direction on, again, the level of funding, and also if the City Council would like to have this agreement placed on the agenda for the next council meeting here in November.
So would it be fair to say then that, okay, item 7 would take precedence over item 6 in terms of what we're talking about at this point, and that there's greater specificity to 7, so you're looking this evening for direction from the council as to whether or not we put this on the next agenda?
That's right, because we do, again, as I said earlier, we have the $390,000 that was budgeted for BN Advantage for this fiscal year. None of that has been committed. It has been considered as part of the BN Advantage would be support for the SBDC, and so now that we have reached a certain time commitment here that is needed, staff would propose using a portion of the $390 that was budgeted for BN Advantage in this fiscal year to apply to the funding for the SBDC.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Grammer? Anyone else want to present? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Alderwoman Bray.
Thank you, Austin, for the information about the opportunities here. Can you share a little bit more information about the matching of the funds, and how the ask that we've received, and then how that, I guess, matches up with available potential matching funds, and is there a minimum and a maximum, and just those kinds of things?
In reference to the federal funds from the SBA?
Yes.
Is that, I believe Karen, would you be able to address that, or Kyle?
I'll address the funding side, and I'll let Karen talk about progress that has been made to this point. So we had an SBDC for about 10 years, and it went away primarily because of funding. And what happened was during the state's 2-year sort of hiatus from a budgeting standpoint, they weren't able to commit those funds, and so they closed nearly half or more of the SBDCs around the state. And really what we find is the more mature SBDCs, the ones that are really running well, for example, Peoria, it's been around a long time. They have about 7-8 staff, full-time staff devoted to small business development. We now have 2 here. But those fundings have been able to maintain because they built more and more public or private sector support, which is what we're going to continue to do, and that's really where my role is. So $80,000 comes from the federal government to the state. It's a pass-through. They bring that back to us. Now, the old way was the state would have a portional match to that $80,000 from the feds, but the state has not funded some of the newer or younger ones. So they're still funding a few of the more mature ones, but because we're brand new, the state is not funding their portion. So we have to rally as a community to provide that local support. If you look in the document, EDC and my board, we've committed, we're on the hook to raise $40,000 from the business community, and we've been doing that, and we'll continue to do that and commit to do that. We see this as a partnership between the private and public sector. And I think that when you hear what's taken place in the last 10 months or 9 months, it's pretty mind-boggling what's been happening at Illinois Wesleyan. And I'd be glad to introduce Karen Busoni, who's the new director of the Small Business Development Center.
Thank you, Kyle. Hi, my name is Karen Busoni. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center, and I'd like to say good evening to Mayor and Alders. Just want to share with you a little bit about the SBDC. We've developed a very, very strong relationship with the EDC, with the Chamber of Commerce, and with the local SCORE chapter as we're working diligently to make a solid impact to the community. Solid economic impact to the community. Since the 2-person Small Business Development Center opened 8 months ago, we've engaged in tremendous activity as we've counseled clients that have developed either a business concept or that own existing businesses. We have far surpassed our goal, which was established to be reached by the end of December. We have surpassed that by 42% already. We have 100 clients today. Our goal was 70. We've identified over 100 local business resources that we can utilize and share with our clients, and they are doing that today. Our center's demographic data, 53% of our clients come from Bloomington. Thought you would be interested in that. 65% of our clients are pre-venture, 35% are existing businesses. It's a 50-50 as far as men-owned businesses, female-owned businesses. The economic impact to the community currently, again, we're a startup small business development center, we're more heavily involved with the pre-venture, so we're in the process of helping our clients start up. Right now, we're close to potential economic impact of $2 million, and we've been open 8 months. And that's going to continue to grow as our clients are beginning to start up their business ideas. By the end of December, the center will have provided 12 2-hour seminars that provide insights as to how to start a business, and additional subject matter including intellectual property, website design, financial statements, etc. And we provide these seminars to our clients and to the public. Other ways the SBDC strongly impacts the community is by providing outstanding project internship opportunities to college students. We are also in the process of reaching out to the local high schools with entrepreneurship curriculum and further developing seminars and anything we can do to help those high schools advance their curriculum as well, where they have a number of students that are interested in entrepreneurial activity. We have a vast array of industries represented from our client base, including health and fitness, entertainment, music, food, beverage, products, retail, arts, marketing, and tech services, restaurants, transportation, travel, and construction. Some of the services that we provide include business feasibility assessment, business plan development, market strategy development, including social media and website design, financial packaging and lending resources for intellectual property, manufacturing assistance, international trade, government contracts, and we have a lot of then the local resources that we're partnering with as well. The funding that is being requested is critical for the existence of the SBDC to continue.
Alderwoman Bray, still have
Thank you for that information. So when we think about matching funds, I think, as I understood, Kyle, you're saying that it's private funds that are going to match or be included here. There are not any federal or state funds that are matching? I wasn't
Yeah.
clear on that.
So for us to leverage the $80,000 from the feds, we need to raise a certain amount of money that can be used or raised either by a public or private. So it's really a partnership.
I
So
see.
our match, the local match is, Bloomington, it's normal, it's private sector businesses doing that match.
So 80,000 is the money that would pass through if we're, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're in the process, Wesleyan is in the process of applying for next year's round of funding for that.
Okay. And I wasn't sure. James, did I skip over you?
No, I was after Kim.
You were after, okay. You were after, okay, go ahead.
Sure. I just want to say thank you, right, for helping get this started again. I have had, I don't even know how many 100 conversations with people over the years who have reached out to either myself or to Kelly for any kind of information and insight when it comes to starting a business. And I'm glad that there are other resources that are out there because we have, kind of stubbornly maybe bullheaded our way through a lot of obstacles the hard way of doing things, where there was a much easier path that could have been taken for us. So I'm glad that there are more resources coming to the community and people that can help folks that are more qualified to give advice than I am. So I'm very happy that that's happening. Especially at a time right now where I think we're going to have a lot of executives who are trying to figure out their future life paths moving forward. And the more of those folks that we could encourage to start businesses in our area and stay inside of our community, we don't want to lose that brain trust. And if we can help them see a future to starting businesses and staying inside of our community, I think that benefits all of us. I'm excited by these kind of opportunities because I don't think we can cut our budget out of some of our future pension obligations. And so I constantly wonder where tax revenues are going to come from 10 years from now and 25 years from now when we're talking about some of the massive pension plan payments that we're going to have to make. How do we get to those numbers and without putting it on the back of residents? And if we can grow businesses and help people with the opportunity to sell things and bring money from outside the community into Bloomington and pay for people to live here and work here, I think that's a positive way for all of us. So, and I love to hear that you're partnering with a SCORE too, because there's some amazing talent inside of that organization. Thank you.
Alderwoman Deanne Hellman.
Thank you. And I believe you did a program for BN Advantage, or BN by the numbers.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
I was the keynote speaker in June. Yes, ma'am.
And I was blown away by the numbers, and that was a few months ago, so I've seen even more. Job growth comes from new business. I mean, micro business, small businesses. I ran a small business for a number of years, and I would, just having heard some of the things at National League of Cities, I would be more inclined to financially support, and I have to put my glasses on so I get the right name here, the Small Business Development Center, perhaps than some others. I mean, that's where it's coming from. And we haven't talked about the split, the potential split. Is that on the table tonight, or is that later?
I think it would be worth talking about tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
As much as I would like to have a 50-50 split, I think probably 60-40 is more
Well,
palatable.
we're not, again, these are just suggestions. We're not voting on anything.
No, I know, but
yeah.
I just want, that's why I asked though, is the split part of the discussion tonight?
Okay.
And so I'm just...
Yes, sorry about that.
So I'm just saying
Yeah,
that...
no, I got you.
That I would probably favor the 60/40, even though I'd personally rather 50/50 from a city standpoint, 60/40.
Yeah, as outlined in the memo, staff is seeking council direction as to what level of funding the council would support. You know, if you were to direct staff to put the proposed agreement on the agenda for next week, and you flip to the Exhibit A and you see 60/40 or 50/50, I wouldn't want you to feel surprised if it's 60/40 if you had feeling strongly the other way for 50/50. Running the numbers out over the 3 years, a 50/50 split between the city and the town would result in a savings of over $12,000 to the city. And so, you know, as I was looking at this initially and, you know, looking at past sharing of economic development initiatives like joint funding for the EDC between the city and the town, it's been 50/50, 100,000 a year, 100,000 a year. So, you know, my inclination as a staff person looking out for the city of Bloomington would be similar, because it's difficult to necessarily say that you know, only a certain percentage of the population of the city versus a town would seek the services of the SBDC. It's also difficult to say that the output of the SBDC would equally benefit or more greatly benefit one community over the other. So going into it, knowing that the benefit some years could be for one, for the other could be the other, or be even in the county or even communities outside this area that people happen to come to our SBDC. Just wanted to get council's feedback.
And if for some reason the council changed its mind between now and a week, we could say, we initially said 50/50, but we're now 60/40 or vice versa.
Well, if you...
as an amendment.
If you'd like this, true, on that night, but as we actually...
You'd prefer for planning,
as we bake the agreement and pass it off to Cherry to get it into the packet that's going on Wednesday for Monday's meeting, I got to know something, so...
Or if you would, we could put it on with an option A and B, so you have time to think about it, and then the motion can be to move A or B.
Thank you, Steve. That's a great idea. Yeah. At this point, Alderman Milawambwe has been interested in speaking for a while, so Milawambwe, Matthey, and Black.
Yeah. Let me just say that we, as a council, we never change our mind. We're always very, you know. But so I am interested in funding this for the many reasons that were said earlier, and much more eloquently than I would say. But I also have a personal experience with it. So one, I attended the Being by the Numbers. That's how I found out about it. And then I had a friend of mine who was interested in starting a business, and I referred them to you. And they were pretty happy with the help that they received. And knowing what they were going through, I think it would have been pretty difficult for them to navigate, you know, certain areas of business that they just were not very familiar with. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Alderman Matthey.
I was just going to see if we could get a pinky promise that we'll get at least 60% of the businesses in Bloomington. So, no, all joking aside, I realize, like Diana, I think that I would love to see it be a 50/50, but the reality is that we're a 60/40 kind of sized area, and that's just some of how this is going to have to work out. So that would be acceptable to me.
Alderman Black.
Thank you. Thank you both. So maybe I'm missing it, but what I'm seeing in the final report, it's on my PDF page 64 or 65, depending on whatever funding model you want to use. The SBA/DCEO is an $80,000 contribution. That's from the state or the federal government through the state? Is that where that money comes from?
Yeah, the federal SBA sends money to the state, and it's just simply a pass-through.
And if I'm remembering from the timeline, there was a period of time in which the Small Business Center had to close because the state failed in passing a budget.
Yes. As I mentioned, the previous one was around for 10 years. It was located on the ISU campus. And this is not a judgment on the previous operation, but I don't think we had a lot of community support, and that would include the EDC, and I think Charlie would say that as well. It sort of operated on its own island. And so when it went away, we made a decision that this was going to be a community partnership. EDC is going to be involved. We're going to help raise capital. We're going to help market it. We're going to help refer it. We're going to help drive it. And the Chamber's made that same commitment. So a much different approach from what we had before.
Thank you. So looking at the agreement itself on page 2, section 2, subsection C, the financial support provided to the center by IWU as outlined in Exhibit A may be made indirect or indirect manner, blah, 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 and then may also include funds received from the United States Small Business Association, SBA, or State of Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, so long as IWU provides a detailed accounting of its financial support and sources of funds to city, town, and BNEDC. So does this somehow make the state pay its bills? Because there's nothing that I'm seeing here that's like, we can have another impasse at any point in time, and then we lose that 80 large for what I think is a critical program.
Yeah. If you could tell me how the state works and functions, I would appreciate it. But, there's no guarantees with the state. Sometimes these pass-through funds get held.
Mm-hmm.
But
they're the least likely to be held.
Yeah, they're the
As
least
I
likely to
understand
be
it.
held.
Here's my fear. I think we should fund this. I think it's a critical program. This is absolutely something that we should be doing. But I'm looking at these funding models, and $80,000 a year is coming from the federal through the state of Illinois, and the state of Illinois has failed us on literally every occasion. And this is another example of how the cities and municipalities have to pick up the burden from our failed leadership in Springfield. And I guess my question would be, suppose in what I consider to be not an unlikely scenario, the state cuts off funding for whatever reason, does this whole program fall apart? Are we going to have another conversation where we're going to have to fill, the city and the town are going to have to fill in that 80 large?
Well, I think I'll speak beyond my board of directors, which are 12 private sector individuals, and I'll speak on behalf of Illinois Wesleyan, President Jensen. We're all committed to this. And so whatever the state does, I mean, we're in our infancy of 9 months, but our leap every year is to become more and more independent, is so that if the community can support it, and I'm not just talking about Bloomington Normal, I'm talking about business community, banks, insurance companies, because if we're churning out companies that are growing, they want to invest in that. Supply chain of, like I said, the bankers that want to fund these companies, the insurance companies that want to insure them, attorneys that want to have clients. I mean, it's a whole system built around growing the economy from the ground up with little bitty companies. And so my goal would be, long-term, is to get off the independence of the state and maybe eventually off of our community players. But this is the starting point.
Sure. Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
At this point then, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that there was another line. Alderwoman Painter.
I just have one question. When ISU had the Small Business Development Center, was there a split between Bloomington and Normal and the federal government at that point?
I am not aware of the two communities financially supporting, and Karen, I don't think that's true. There was a smaller level of private sector funding, but they operated on a much smaller budget. And so they had one individual that worked there for that period of time, and they had a much smaller perspective of the work that they were doing. And so she mentioned it's not just the clients coming in the door, but it's the programs. I mean, 12 going out into the community and teaching people about business plans. It's about, I don't think she mentioned that we had a special event for veterans. And so the activities, the program is of larger scale, and so our budget is much larger. But the former SBDC operated much smaller, and there was no Bloomington or town of Normal support for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. At this point, are there any objections to moving forward with a 60-40 split as suggested by, or the other alternative is, if we still want more time, we could do what interim city manager Steve Rasmussen suggested, and that is have a 50-50 or 60-40, and we decide next week. Alderman Bray.
Yes, I was going to mention, I thought we said that Steve's approach would be helpful to us as we study this a bit more.
Okay, so we want two options.
Two options.
Anybody against two options? Okay, two options it is. All right. If we could go get Alderwoman Schmidt. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Karen.
You for your time.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you very much for your
Everyone.
time.
Charlie, I keep, sometimes you're so far in the back room, I forget you. But thank you all so much for all the hard work you've done. And obviously, we're all in this together. Thank you. Let's see. Now we move, last item, formal item before our executive session. And just so everyone knows, we have no items after our executive session. So you're certainly welcome to leave, and or you're welcome to stay for our adjournment, which is the only thing that we would have. Or the music, spellbinding as it might be. Under number 8, we have discussion to clarify processes for elected city officials to place items on a city council agenda. And we start out with a presentation by Alderman David Sage, because this came through aldermanic comments. And then we have a 20-minute, approximately, council discussion. And I'm going to turn over Alderman Sage.
Thank you. And presentation might be a little generous, just some sharing of some thoughts and maybe a suggestion or two. I've been reflecting recently on some items, and today we find ourselves in a challenging situation, and I've just highlighted a few of those. We have an interim city manager, and as one would expect, Steve is leaving the assistant city manager position open. So Steve, thank you for your willingness to take on a greater workload during this time. Our community development director recently resigned, leaving another key staff leadership position open. As a result of these openings, our staff is clearly stepping up and doing more with less. So our thanks to our team for their commitment. At best, we have flat and more likely declining revenue. Regardless, we don't have the needed revenue growth. At the same time, we have coming multi-million-dollar budget deficits, and we know the landscape of our local business community has started to change. These are challenging times, and to be successful, our council must be working at a higher level. Without this, we'll simply not be able to meet these challenges. I've also been reflecting on our recent retreat. There we talked about 3 simple steps we can take to help our team, the council and staff, perform at a higher level. And again, they're very simple and straightforward. Number 1, the city plan must be clear, specific, and majority supported. Administration, department heads, and city staff must have clear goals, priorities, and objectives from the council by majority vote, and that are directly linked to whatever is driving the plan for the city. Again, very straightforward. Clear, specific, and majority supported. City plan amendments. If or when new goals, priorities, projects, and/or objectives are added through council majority approval, they must link to the council-approved plan, or the plan must be amended accordingly. Again, another fairly simple and straightforward idea. Number 3, council decisions must stand. In order for administration, department heads, and city staff to assure that they are working on the right priority, in the right order, at the right time, majority council decisions must stand. Wasted work on subsequently withdrawn decisions and/or rework due to a final decision being put on hold for more information creates significant wasted time and staff frustration, and impacts productivity on other council-approved priorities. Incorporating these 3 simple actions will help our council team perform at a higher level. And again, we have challenging times that we have to be prepared for. The budget conversation between now and adoption is going to be difficult, and we simply, in my opinion, we have to figure out to be working better as a team. My ask for our council tonight is for us, again, working collectively, to develop a process where we incorporate these 3 simple actions: clear, specific, and majority supported, a plan for amendments, again, through council majority approval, changes to that, and council decisions must stand. I'd like to ask that we have our suggestions I'm inviting the council that we have our suggestions, our ideas, our feedback. I mean, I know mine will include, obviously, these 3 actionable steps, that we have those to Jeff Jurgens by December 1st. And Jeff's willing to do that. I know he's not here tonight, but he would be willing to take those. And that we have these consolidated ideas, recommendations brought back to us at our December 11th meeting. Again, I think fairly straightforward. I think, again, starting with those 3 basic ideas that we discovered at our retreat, and then the collective wisdom, insights, if you will, of the council. I know Bruce has raised some valid points in terms of maybe some additional use of Robert's Rules of Order. I believe that doing this is going to help us on many levels. It will help us maximize the value of the taxpayer dollars we spend. It helps maximize the value of staff time spent doing city work. And surely we want to help our manager and his team be more efficient with their time, especially given the openings that we have. And it will help us be more effective with our time by helping us focus on majority council-supported priorities. And this, in turn, will lead to a higher performing council team, in my opinion. So again, I appreciate the time to share these thoughts with you. My ask would be to provide that feedback to Jeff by December 1st, and that if we can have that brought back to us by our December 11th council meeting. And I welcome hearing some of the ideas or thoughts from others on the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Others. Alderwoman Burgess.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And I just have a question for you, because the Alderman request form has specific requests in terms of changes. Are you now altering that to be a general discussion of council and staff efficiency?
I think what I've done is to take a step back and say that ordinance would be one possibility, but it occurred to me that there probably is more value that can be considered as part of the feedback given to Jeff. But I also would like to be prepared to perhaps open up the path a little bit for again, collective ideas of the council back to Jeff to report back to us at the 11th.
Alderwoman Brooks, are you finished?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe another one was coming. Alderwoman Schmidt.
That was a pregnant pause there. I was waiting for more. Okay. So I think about this, the initial ordinance change that you proposed is, sorry, Scott, but I'll call it the Kalamaya Basin Amendment. Yeah, the Kalamaya Calamity, right, where, for those of you who don't know about the Kalamaya Basin, Alderman Black and I got really excited about putting a pump track out on the west side that was not in the Parks and Rec plan, and I really can't quantify how much time went into that, but I think we began to understand that we were going down a rabbit hole that really didn't fit into our city priorities. So it feels like that's what we're trying to make sure, that we're really marshaling our resources, we're working together as a team, we're collaborating, and I think one suggestion that David made to us at the retreat that might be something that we consider is, I got the impression, Steve, that he actually asked department heads to begin to create some reports about the things that aldermen are asking for, so that for our own awareness of the what we're putting into My Bloomington, but certainly things that may be beginning to help to cause us to shift off of our focus that we have collaboratively agreed on. What's
Yes,
the
both
status
those
of
things.
that?
And I will be getting that back to you at the end of next week, so I'll get a summary of those things that you had talked about, that, as the mayor said, at the 500-foot level. We're also working on the My Bloomington to see if we can make that more user-friendly and more applicable for everyone. So we're working both of those things.
Alderman Sage.
Yes, thank you.
And by the way, that
oh,
was,
sorry.
of the things that we came out with 13 different things that you asked us to look at. So I specifically got a list of 13 we're coming back to you on.
Thank you, Steve. Alderman Sage.
Thank you. And Karen, to your point, I mean, so again, from our retreat notes, here's what it says specifically. Set up a method by which all requests, operational questions, interventions, special interest, specific ward needs, etc., to department heads, city staff, from council members, in any grouping, will be captured in a report for all of us to see, is basically, I think, the idea that you alluded to.
So I guess I'm seeing the issue that we want to grapple with is not just about an agenda, but about how we engage staff to get involved in projects that may be taking our eye off the ball, so to speak.
I mean, and again, to me, those 3 points from our retreat sum it up nicely. The specific, measurable, majority-supported city plan. If changes are needed to that, they are made by by a majority of the council. And that along with that is something we've talked about before, is that if something is to be added to the plan, a change to the plan, then it should be the council's responsibility to talk about what comes off the plan, right? We can't keep putting more things on the plan and then be somehow bewildered that all of those things are not getting done, right? The plan should be the agreement, the understanding that we have as a council with staff for some period of time, whether it's a year or not. And then finally, this idea that council decisions have to stand. I think, again, those are 3 good actionable items.
Let's see, Alderman Black and Burgess.
Thank you. And I appreciate the work that's been done thus far on this. And also the opportunity to reach back out to Jeff for additional thoughts and feedback. I won't be able to attend the December 11th meeting. I'll be out of town, but that shouldn't stop any progress on this. My feedback would be, thus far what I have heard is that people are concerned about Open Meetings Act violations. If 5 people are deciding ahead of time on policy decisions before it comes to the council. Now, I know that when we crafted the Alderman's Request form about 2-3 years ago, I think, we were concerned about that as well, and that's why we had a lower number of aldermen required to sign off on a document for a change. And that was a result of the Kalamaya Basin conversation and trying to be better and more cognizant of staff resources. The way I see it right now, we have a lot of challenges in front of us. I think a new city manager may be coming in soon here that may have a different approach, and we can always change at that point in time. I guess the question that I'd have in any kind of final version would be, what is the implications from an OMA perspective of having a 5-person majority feedback Alderman request form, and it may not pass the smell test for the public. So how do we either get around that or be clearer or change the whole process? And one of the things that I would suggest, and I'll put this in my email to Jeff, is that these committee of the whole meetings, I remember when I first got on the council, we were doing small committees, which I didn't think was a good model for us, but I think committee of the whole does a better job of it. This might be the time where we put in other business, suggestions from aldermen, and that way we can get some feedback from staff if they say, well, wait a minute, you're deviating far too far from our plans, so we either get you to pass the vote, because I'm a big fan of resolutions, put it in public, vote on it, and make the adjustments as appropriate. But we've asked way too much of staff lately, and the time that they've spent on many of these big projects is time that we're not going to get back. And we sometimes only think in terms of money as a resource, but so is time. And so anything we can do to make that a better process, I'm all for.
Okay, Alderwoman Burgess and then Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I think many of the concepts being discussed here tonight are ones that I doubt we will disagree on. I mean, in general, we all want to be more efficient. We all want to be, the best stewards of taxpayer dollars and city resources that we can be. The challenge is, what does that mean? And I think that we all are going to see that a little bit differently. It's interesting to me that the Kalamala Basin is brought up as something to avoid. I don't necessarily see it that way. And maybe my memory of that event is different, but first of all, it predates the Alderman request form. and Alderman Black and Schmidt were doing some advocacy on behalf of a community group. And my memory is when it came to the point of time where it would require a more significant staff investment, it was brought to the Committee of the Whole. A consensus was reached on council to move forward. I remember being very excited about that potential project, but then it ultimately did not move forward because of feasibility issues. It hit a dead end. And I think that, to me, I would be very concerned at adopting new policies or procedures that restricted our ability to put ideas out into the public forum, or created the impression that we can't discuss ideas, and that if an idea for some reason becomes unfeasible or new information comes along or new opportunities arise, that we wouldn't deviate from that, to me would be a concern. I think it is responsible of us to be as consistent as possible, but we also have to be flexible, and finding that fine line is difficult. And sometimes it requires a substantial investment of city resources and staff time to find out all the answers to the questions that we have. I mean, an example of that would be the last proposal for a hotel and conference center. We passed a resolution, 8-1. I think we were all hopeful it would lead somewhere. Ultimately, the best decision was to say that it was not the right project for us. And we can have regret about that, but we made the best decision possible, and I don't think we should have stayed down that path when it became clear it wasn't best for us. So I think my concern would be about moving too quickly in an area where there could be unintentional outcomes. So again, I would not want to see us adopt policies or procedures that reduce efficiency of council or the office of the mayor or the office of the city manager. And I don't want to see us adopt policies that would silence the minority opinion or minority points of view. I think it is very, very important that we as a council address those, even if we don't take action. Even if we say a majority of council is not interested, sometimes there will be issues that need to be discussed in the public forum. So I think Alderman Sage's suggestion to continue the conversation, to look at other areas, is very well taken, and I certainly would support that.
Alderman Milwaukee.
Thank you. As I thought about this particular topic, I was reminded of some of the comments that David Hales made at the council retreat, and it's funny because those were things that I had heard them mention a number of times, particularly to make sure that the staff only pursues things that have council majority support, and I think that all it came to light in a very real way. You were talking about the hotel, given the amount of money that was spent on that particular endeavor, but also the amount of not only money but also staff time that I think and when David was talking about it initially, yes, you do listen, but you have something that you want to pursue, and you keep pursuing it, and that I think to me was one of the biggest mistakes that we made, given the amount of money that was spent there. We could have used that money to do other things. We just recently, I remember Jay Teslov gave us a summary of some of the facts with the BCPA, and we had an opportunity there to hire somebody who could raise funds, and that I think it's something that I've always mentioned to staff. This is something we need to do a little bit more of. So I saw that as a missed opportunity. Money spent on the hotel project and money not spent on fundraising for the BCPA, and we probably wouldn't be where we are with the BCPA at this moment. So I'm glad that the space has been open for more conversation. My interest is really for us to be a higher functioning council. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I think this provides us with a great opportunity to do that. As difficult as the conversation may be sometimes, but I think we all are a group of adults, who are caring towards one another. As the mayor looks at me in a very caring way, thank you. But I really do think, yeah, out of, as they say, it's a French expression, out of friction comes light. So I think there will be light at the end of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Schmidt and Bray.
Thank you. I just
Excuse
wanted...
me, Schmidt, Painter, Bray. Sorry.
I wanted to speak to something that Alderman Burgess said. I don't look at this as any wish at all to dampen minority opinions because, that's where those strokes of genius come, and we don't want to dampen those down. But if we'll use Kalamaya Basin, I think the thing that was troubling to me, just in reflecting about it, is I think we all have the same experience with our staff. If we ask them to do something, they're going to go 100% into it, and they need to hear from us that we respect decisions that we've made here collectively, and not put the time into, I don't know how many hours y'all put into Kalamaya Basin before we had a public conversation. I know it was a lot, and that shouldn't have happened. And I can think of recent decisions where there's been a lot of staff time invested and none of us really were at the table or knew that we were going to do things. And suddenly, you all have been diverted from work that was perhaps a higher priority. So I think we're trying to find that balance there where we, as Mboka said, to be more highly functioning group, and also to build that team that with the city manager and your department heads, and get some things done that we know we have to get done, and not get distracted.
Let's see, Alderwoman Painter and Bray.
Thank you. To begin with, I don't see this as a situation that will last forever. Right now, we're in kind of strange times. Not only have we lost our city manager and our community development director, but we've also lost the head procurement person. We've lost one of our chief accountants. We've lost a very important person in the clerk's office. And the person who handles our work comp is now retiring. So we're really short-staffed. And, I don't want to lay a lot of extra stuff on them at this time. And secondly, I don't think that there is any problem with the Open Meetings Act because all the 5 people are agreeing to is to discuss it, not to pass it, not to, go lockstep with one another, but we all would agree that it's something worth discussing. We don't want to cut you out of it, Mayor. You would be just as welcome to start one of these things as anybody else. It would also, I think, aid in teamwork. That's one thing that the council could work on, and it would help with time management. I just don't see a downside for this, and I don't think that, I don't think we're trying to take your power away from you or anything like that. But I do think we really need to work on our time management, and I don't think anybody can argue that our meetings are exponentially longer than normal meetings are. And not that I think having a short meeting is a good thing, but I think sometimes, we go on and on and on.
I think you meant aren't.
Pardon?
You meant aren't, right?
Aren't what?
Aren't longer.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
nobody...
I thought I said that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry. But anyway.
I think that's true.
So,
thank you.
thanks.
Alderwoman Bray and then Sage.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak to this, and thank you for bringing up this important piece, Dave, and presenting it to several. And I was very happy to sign this because I see this simply as an administrative piece. let's just bring all the skills that we have to these problems, and one being how do we set up a good administrative model considering all the challenges that we have today, and how do we continue to have conversations about things that are important while not getting derailed from things that don't have broad support or have I guess the majority interested in hearing more about it. So I would agree, Amelia. I'm interested to hear that perspective, that you're concerned about quashing a minority view or stifling creativity, but I think really that's not the case. I think that sitting here with these 9 wards and the mayor, I think we represent a really broad spectrum of thoughts and skills, and I think that folks would sign on to hear more about ideas that they think would benefit the city. So I don't see it as folks saying, well, no, that's not exactly on this path, and therefore we're not going to take a look at it. At the same time, I think that it establishes some good business practices that say that, if you don't have a groundswell or some kind of initial support for this idea, let's not put the staff to work on this, because they've got things that we've already agreed, that we've already consented around and said that those are the things that we want them to work on. So why would we divert them to things that are not yet, don't have enough people that want to hear more about it? So again, to me, this is just improved administration and strengthening some solid business practices, and I would be supportive of that. So thank you.
And I had promised the next to Alderman Sage, and then...
I'll come after Amelia.
Actually, we haven't heard from Alderman Mathey yet, and then Burgess.
So I love this conversation and that we're having it and we're talking about it. And I think that there's a lot of different perspectives and ways to look at it. The idea of actually having some sort of a new business or future ideas section at the end of our meetings is very appealing to me. And having those conversations of, what are we interested in? What are we thinking about? How can we be more transparent with our constituents and letting them know, the sort of things that are kind of rattling around in our conscious right now, that we want to talk about in the future, because if we have those sorts of discussions as the end section of a meeting, we might hear more ideas and interest from our residents as they've been thinking the same path, or they have ideas. They might bring new things forward to us. So that's kind of what I wanted to add to the conversation. Is that chunk right there is very appealing to me. There's some logistical issues to work out how to do that. The other thing is, of course, is I'm not a lawyer, but I also feel much like Johnny that getting a consensus to say we want to have a public conversation about this doesn't seem like something that should be in the Open Meetings Act, because we're not deciding. We're saying we want to talk about this. We think this is worthwhile spending time to talk about. But of course, we'll have to defer to Jeff and our attorneys to figure that out. So. My final comment is, I was not on the council with the hotel situation, but it may feel like we wasted a lot of money, but I think that the council and staff learned a lot, and sometimes, unfortunately, you pay for the experiences that you get. Because council didn't know what they didn't know, and neither did staff, and now we know. So if somebody comes to us the next time, I think everybody is much more informed going into a conversation with those sorts of massive development opportunities. So, thank you.
Alderman Burgess and Sage.
And this is just some questions. I don't expect them to be answered tonight, but I think might be helpful to us, and that maybe looking at how many Alderman request forms have been filed over the last, has it been 2 years since we adopted that? 2 years, year and a half, I don't know.
Anybody remember?
However long it's been. How many have been filed? How many ultimately led to council action? Might help identify
That's a good question.
and narrow down what we need to be focused on. So questions like that, perhaps more information would be helpful.
Okay. Alderman Sage.
Thank you, and Scott, I appreciate your questions, your comments. And this will be something you've heard me say before, right? I'm hopeful that the feedback, and I hope that the council would be willing to give that feedback to Jeff by December 1st, that we'll focus on the whats, right? And then we'll allow Jeff to focus on the hows, including any issues or concerns or management of anything related to the Open Meetings Act. You know, I feel like that's a better model. That usually works better for us when we focus on the what's and leave the hows to staff. And so again, I'm hopeful. If anybody is uncomfortable with sending sending that stuff to Jeff by December 1st, I'd hope we could talk about it. Maybe here for a minute, and then again, as I suggested, Mayor, I hope we can have a little follow up at our December 11th meeting on what the consolidated feedback is from the council.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any trouble with the 11th. Do you see any trouble with the 11th, Mr. Rasmussen? Okay.
Thank you.
So 11th it is. If there are, you suggested a December 1st, we are talking about trying to possibly expedite packets, possibly on Tuesdays. I don't want to make the department heads too worried about that, but Steve had a great idea, I thought, and that will take a little while, but even if we receive it the 2nd or the 3rd, I think, Steve, is that pretty safe to say? I think we can probably still accommodate it?
Yes, I think we can make the 11th.
As long as we get it about a week in advance?
Yes.
And so just to make that part clear, yeah, Alderman Sage.
And appreciate that flexibility. I guess I'd like for us to settle on one date, and then
Okay.
and then that will kind of be the target that we're working towards as a council to get that feedback to Jeff.
Okay.
And so whether it's the 1st or the 3rd or the 4th,
Well, how about if we can make the following, as long as, Steve, you're okay with this? Let's say 1 week beforehand, give the council maximum time. Especially given the holidays and whatever. December 4th, to put on the agenda for the 11th.
And appreciate that. If we do it the 1st, that gives us an entire week after Thanksgiving to get that information to Jeff.
And gives Jeff a chance.
And then gives Jeff, I think probably the heavier lifting may be on Jeff's part of this, as he's trying to kind of gather and review and analyze and correlate the feedback from the council.
Okay, so this is one of those balancing acts between the staff and the council time. So as long as we're okay with the 1st, we still have a couple more people here who want to speak. Alderman Black and Hellman.
I'm reminded of our retreat conversation about work-life balance, and the 1st is a Friday, and so that if we're talking about a Tuesday packet, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it on that Friday, but that would then be putting a lot of heavy lifting on Jeff to get that done over the weekend. Now, that may be okay with Jeff, but I want to be cognizant of the feedback that we've heard from our leadership.
Well, just to clarify this, if the 1st is a Friday and it's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, if the 4th is a Monday, Jeff does not, by the 11th, Jeff doesn't have to give us everything we need. Right? Jeff can come and amend, addenda, or it can be, essentially, this could be conversation 2.0.
I guess at least in my time, I've never heard this conversation about having a packet out on Tuesday before, and I wouldn't want to
This is last week.
That. Okay.
This is okay. Well, there have been a couple of council members who've been concerned about this for quite a while.
I think the 1st is fine, and then I'm visualizing with our typical packet process is plenty of time. I don't know anything about a Tuesday, but I know about that we can usually get out by Thursday.
Okay, all right, okay. So we don't get any further off. I think
the point maybe you were alluding to was that's not a council weekend. Well, on Friday the 1st,
right.
Jeff's not going to be having the
juggling
staff
everything.
meeting stuff hanging over him for that following
He's not
Monday.
hanging on. That's my only point. My guess is get him in by the 1st, but if we got him in by the 4th, we still might be able to sneak those things in. Alderman Hellman.
Okay, so this is a question for Alderman Sage. I was not at the retreat, so help me, just clarify for me what the ask is that we're been debating the date on.
The ask is to give feedback to Jeff on how we can perhaps start to adopt those 3 action items that we covered at our retreat. A specific action plan with majority council support, how we're going to handle amendments to that plan, including removes and adds, again with majority council support, and this idea of council decisions must stand.
Got Thank you.
And then let staff figure out the hows around. I mean, I know those are what I will be submitting. But there could be something, I know, I think maybe you mentioned, Diana, I mean, you attended, I think, some sessions at National League of City. Maybe there's some carry back from that could be part of your, your submission to Jeff. I don't know.
I'm getting the evil eye from our clerk because we were beyond 20 minutes, well beyond that. But I do have a few things to say. I think this is the essence, of what our council decision-making should look like. Thank you, Alderman Sage, by the way, for bringing this. This could have been a conversation that went in a different direction. This conversation was extremely productive. There were lots of good, tangible suggestions. We all came to agreement on lots of things moving forward. In fact, I think almost everything that was said, there might have been a couple things I think we can probably all agree on. And so I applaud that. There's a couple of other things. As we, regardless of what happens with the agenda, I gotta put my glasses on. I apologize for this. There are a couple specific. If 4 people want something on the agenda, it's gonna be on the agenda. I promise you that, right? And then we have the only times I have not put things on the agenda was before we had this form, and they were from aldermen who were not on this current council, and they were very specific things that had very little traction beyond that particular alderman. So if there is broad support, and when I talked to Brad Cole at Illinois Municipal League, he says, sometimes when these kinds of things come up, it's an alderman and city manager who keep refusing items to be put on the agenda, and eventually gets to a majority of the council. But beyond that, the other thing, I will do a better job of trying to discuss with all of you the things that I put on the agenda, or that Steve and I put on because Steve and I always talk about the agenda. I mean, there's nothing unilateral about any of this. Again, I think this is a great opportunity for us to start to work together, and I also apologize to my colleagues who felt the need to bring this up, who very well-intentioned colleagues, for some structural reasons, because of either or I'll even be another step forward, poor communication on my part, not just miscommunication, poor communication on my part, that may have led people to concerns about this. So I think going from here, though, I do also share Alderman Milwambwe and Alderman Sage's points about a balance, and then I guess you didn't use the word, but the assumption was there with Alderwoman Burgess about new ideas. We should not be afraid of new ideas, but that also means we have to understand that there is a balance to be made. I'll bring up something that nobody else brought up, that they could have brought up, and I appreciate that you didn't bring this up. I suppose at some level it was a different kind of conversation. The mayor's aide, okay? I did at the beginning believe that there were 3 Alder people who were supportive of it, and you needed some information. I gathered a lot of it myself. The Illinois Municipal League gathered a lot of it. So we never had a vote on it, but I only found out about 3 days. Actually, I believe it was, not to pick on Alderman, I believe within like 2 minutes of each other, I got responses from Alderwoman Painter and Alderman Matthey. So this is only a few days beforehand that it was really clear that there were not going to be majority support. But, and this is my point, is not just that sometimes those things happen, it's that there is a broader issue that we have to come to and discuss in this community at some point over the next half century. Sorry, no, half decade. Hopefully we do it more than the next half century. Very likely beyond the time that I'm going to be mayor. And that is, we should have people who can be mayor who are either not retired or are unrealistic about the job and the requirements. They think they can maybe even have a job in another town and do this job with some degree of consistency. I don't know what that is. This particular council said they had no interest in this particular staff person, and some of its budgets, whatever the issue is not. There is a broader issue that probably, we're not bringing it up anytime soon, might bring it up in a year or two, and the mayor of Champaign earns about 3 times as much as the mayor of Bloomington, and they don't even have Parks and Rec. But that allows that person to take some time off from their regular work on a regular basis. So that allows a little bit of flexibility. So I don't know what those options are, but it's an issue, it's an agenda item that should be out there. I don't consider it a failure. I didn't, if you want to call wins, loses, I see it, this is the first conversation. That one didn't work out. But I think the broader issue should be out there, should be in the back of our minds. It's probably a third-tier priority, but it's certainly something that's out there. Again, I don't honestly know the details of the basin with Alderwoman Schmidt.
That's okay. You don't need to.
And Black. It sounded like it might be a good idea, and then at some point we realized it was not, right? And then we said, no, thank you, right? And so there are going to be these trade-offs, and I think the thing that I'm hoping that we all begin to understand is, first of all, we're all human beings and we all make mistakes, and everybody up here is up here because they want the best for the city of Bloomington. And nobody is up here for the money, right? And that much we know. You may disagree with us, and that's part of, I think maybe I didn't put this in the best way in the meeting that I came back, but that's part of the theme that I should have stressed more effectively, and I did not stress more as effectively, or I stressed it in a way that was understood by some, but misunderstood, I think, by others. I certainly did not mean some things that were understood by that. But anyway, I'm sorry. You have a final.
When we wrap up, I have a request.
As usual, I blew it around too much. I think Alderman Jamie Matthews, he's always very tactful. And at one point, I forgot how you put it, James. It was so nice. It was essentially, I would have said, you blither on too much, dude. He put it in a very, very nice way. I forgot what it was, that nobody would have taken offense to.
So I'm just wondering if, Alderman Sage, what you described to Diana Howman, I would really appreciate having an email that just says, here are the 3 points, here's the date, so that...
Thank you.
That we're focused in what we're responding to.
Thank you. Thanks, and I think...
maybe send that to Cherry, and Cherry, you could send that out. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And actually, I've made one mistake. I said all 10 of us. Okay. At this point, are there any other items for action? We actually need a motion to adjourn into executive session that will begin in about 7 minutes, because I definitely have had way too much salsa water.
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Howman. Is there a second? Second by Alderwoman...
Could I add to that, Mr. Moore?
Pardon me?
Asked by Mr. Juergens to point out at this point with respect to the motion that we're talking about individual performance of an employee during the personnel.
We are talking about individual I'm sorry, of an employee. Okay. And this has to be done individually. Yes. The second was Alderwoman Bray.
Alderman Bray?
Yes.
Alderman Matthey?
Yes.
Alderman Sage?
Yes.
Alderman Malumboy?
Yes.
Alderman Burgess?
Yes.
Alderman Painter? Alderman Schmidt?
Yes.
Alderman Black? Yes. And Alderman Harmon?
Yes.
Okay, we will convene at 11:45. I'm going to need to go to the bathroom. But I will be back.